Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The East Coast swing of the spring football tour continues from College Park, Maryland, up to Piscataway, New Jersey. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Locked On Big Ten podcast, the Locked On Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Stevens. It is Friday, April 9th, and today is a little bit of an away game for us here on the Locked On Big Ten podcast, but also closer to home. I am stationed in Chicago, Illinois, closer to Rosemont, Illinois, in the Big Ten headquarters, and joining me today on our spring football tour, our fifth and final stop of this week. It is all about Rutgers football, and Aaron Breitman, the managing editor of On the Banks, covering everything about Rutgers athletics, joins us today to be our tour guide in Piscataway, New Jersey, for how spring practice is going for the Scarlet Knights. Aaron Breitman, pleasure to have you back on the podcast once again.
Thanks so much for having me, Ben. I can't believe we're transitioning to fall sports already, but also fun as well. So lots to look forward to from a Rutgers perspective, and hope is alive, which is a good thing.
So before we get into football, the last time we spoke was about Rutgers ending the 3-decade-long streak, making the NCAA tournament for the men's basketball program. You shared with me that when all was said and done and Selection Sunday was final, you would pop off a glass of scotch and celebrate. How was that celebration, my friend?
It was special. You know, it was in true Rutgers fashion. It was heartbreaking, and with the way they went down against Houston, they were right there. But in the grand scheme of things, it was really. And to be honest with you, there's no downtime anymore. I mean, the off season literally started within like 2 days. In terms of Jacob Young announced literally after the game that he was leaving, which was to be expected. But so I was a little, it's been a little hard. There has been no downtime really. We're already on to the off-season, building next season's roster, which is a lot to be excited about as well. But yeah, it was quite a season. Very close to on to be 16, but I think that the foundation that's been built and the way Pikel is building the program. There's people that are nervous now that there's going to be roster turnover, but I think this is really the next step of this build place, and Rutgers goes from a good team to a really good program long term.
And that's the new era in college basketball in the offseason. The transfer portal sleeps for nobody and just continuously rotates. And that's a part of being a big-time basketball program in the Big Ten Conference. But before we talk about Rutgers basketball in 2020, 2021, 2022, let's talk about Rutgers football in 2021. You mentioned hope is on the horizon. Year number 2 of the return to Piscataway for Greg Schiano. But before spring practice got underway at the end of March, there was a brief COVID pause for that Rutgers football program. What's the latest update there? Are they back on the field, ready to go in spring workouts?
Not yet. There hasn't been a full announcement yet. It shouldn't be significant like they had last summer, where there was an outbreak and the program had a quarantine for 14 days. And it seems less severe this time, so hopefully it won't be nearly as long. They have not postponed the spring game, Scarlet White game, which is scheduled for May 1st. So it's actually possible they could have practices up to the spring game and have a couple after as well. There's no rule against that, but right now they haven't changed the schedule too much. Hoping maybe, in the next week or two, they get back on the field. And obviously it's a crucial time for Schiano not having spring practice last year. So they really need to take advantage of these 15 practices this spring.
Yeah, Aaron, I've been talking about this on the spring football tour with the various programs we've stopped by already on the Big Ten East Division, and just the importance of this spring. After a compacted season last year for pretty much everybody, Rutgers was one of 2 teams in the Big Ten that played the full 9-game slate, but still a shortened season. How vital is this spring, just getting the time on the field for this team?
Oh, it's huge. It's really, it's remarkable what they were able to accomplish last year with an entire new coaching staff. Schiano had spoken about how they learned how to incorporate everything through calls and video. And but there's nothing like being on the field, going through drills, going through repetitions. And this team really didn't have that last year. So I think, and even when they did have training camp, like every other Big Ten team, school was already in session. So they didn't even have a true training camp. And for a program that was completely turning over, that was certainly a challenge. So, yeah, they've had Schiano's gotten a lot of early enrollees from the recruiting class. About half of the 21 class is enrolled early. So you have a lot of newcomers there. There's transfers they're working in. They were able to get a lot of returnees as well. But, they really need this development time to prepare and to give themselves a good foundation going into the summer because they're going to have to hit the ground running in the fall or in August for sure with a very challenging schedule this season coming up.
And even in 2020, with the weird shortened season, Rutgers football won 3 Big Ten games. That was almost as many wins in one season as Chris Ash had in his entire tenure in Piscataway when he had 4 Big Ten wins. So the return of Greg Schiano was very promising. 3-6 in 2020 for the Big Ten season. What is the level of expectation now in the spring for Rutgers football?
Well, I think a lot of fans sometimes mistake. They're going to be linear. So who's going to be better? I'm not so sure that maybe seeing what the schedule is going to be, what it is. Will it be at all? Will there be a full non-conference slate? I think very possible with this team. It will be a better product. Maybe it won't result in a huge differential with win totals. They have harder this year with the West playing Iowa, Northwestern versus last year where they had Illinois. And also, even though they lost to Nebraska, obviously it wasn't, the top of the conference. And they played Wisconsin as well. So, those are 3 crossover games that are definitely more difficult. And I think, it just remains to be seen. There's a lot of question marks. A lot of key returnees back. It's really going to be what the newcomers do and how much improvement you see on both lines, I think, is really, really the biggest question for Rutgers.
So when we focus on the question marks for Rutgers heading into 2021, what would you say the biggest one is on the offensive side of the ball? Is it that O-line or is it somewhere else? Quarterback position, wide receivers, whatever it may be.
Well, that's something unexpected. It looks like Noah will be back as the starting quarterback in terms of holding on to that role. I don't think Artikowski's challenged him for that. They haven't brought in anyone new. I thought maybe they would. I think they're comfortable with Vitrol. I think he's understanding the offense. We know he's not going to necessarily win games on his arm, but I think key for him is minimizing mistakes and not losing games on his arm. And I think that he provides stability. Rutgers, this will be the first time in over a decade they've had the same coordinator, same starting quarterback. So I think that offensive line is really the big question. They did a really good job. The offensive coordinator, Sean Gleason, and Andrew Aldrich, the offensive line coach, I think they did a good job getting what they got out of the offensive line last year. But I think it was a season went on. They really were under and physically, we're worn down by a Big Ten defensive line. So really, as a program, for them to truly emerge as a middle of the pack, or better program, it's really getting that offensive line, where it needs to be. And that takes time. That's not something you can even change, even with the transfer portal nowadays. It's not going to take a year to transform it. It's going to take a couple of years, 3 years. So, getting that existing group, they have 7 guys back, so that's encouraging from a continuity standpoint. But I think, getting the most out of that group is really going to allow the offense to grow overall.
That's how Rutgers football knows they need to make a statement in the Big Ten. You focus on the hog mollies up front. That still is a staple of Big Ten football. That's what we love here in the conference. So as we flip from the offensive side of the ball to the defense, what would you say is the biggest question mark on the defensive side of the ball for the Scarlet Knights?
Well, at the defensive line, they've actually, they have some contributors back. Their linebacking core is extremely strong. And back again, their secondary is looking pretty good, pretty deep actually. But that up front, they really need improvement. And, they lost Michael Dwumfor, who was a transfer from Michigan. He had a big impact last year. I think a potential, not newcomer, but transfer from Minnesota. Mayan Ahanatu, he started to creep into his time at the end of last season. I think that's a guy that could really step up. But they need, you need 8 to 10 guys that can rotate in throughout the game and keep things at a certain level. And Rutgers hasn't had that in a long time. So I think they're building towards that. I think they have some newcomers that could really contribute early on. They also have a transfer from Temple, Afeni Maea. I think he could have an impact as well. So, Schiano's done a masterful job of the transfer portal, getting guys that were not just, highly recruited that maybe didn't work out at a program, but guys that actually produced where they're coming from and are able to then come to Rutgers and I think, step right in and make an impact. So that's really going to be a key to the overall team's development as well this season.
I completely agree with you. Not only has Greg Schiano recruited well and bringing in high school guys from around the area, he has hit the transfer market hard, and even into his first year in his return, got some very valuable transfers that had playing experience, not only just in college football at a high level, but within the Big Ten Conference as well. So we've talked about some of the biggest question marks on both sides of the ball. What do you think the best overall position group returning for Rutgers in 2021 is?
It's been a while since I've been able to say this, probably since the Schiano era, but the secondary is looking really, really good. You have guys back like Trey Avery. Max Melton was a freshman that emerged last year. They also got the transfer from North Carolina, Patrice Renee, who was very good there. It's a group that I think at safety, they had Christian last year. I forgot Avery Young, of course, the captain and a great cornerback. So you have really embarrassment of cornerback, which is something Rutgers hasn't had really since Schiano's first tenure. I think it's to fill that second safety spot. Do they move somebody over? But really having that consistency of limiting big plays and also being able to step up in the run game and prevent big runs. Rutgers obviously has traditionally given up a ton of big plays in Big Ten play. So cutting down on those big, I think really, although the line play is obviously crucial, I think the secondary is really key on limiting how those big, ultimately end up.
Now, this is just a question born out of my own ignorance, but is Isaiah Pacheco back alongside Noah Vedral in the backfield at that starting quarterback and running back spot this upcoming year as well?
He is. You have Pacheco back. You have Bo Melton back at wide receiver. You have Aaron Breitman back. You have Shameen Jones back. You also have someone I'm really excited about is Joshua Youngblood, who transferred from Kansas State. Big 12 freshman specialist of the year. Between him and Crookshank, and I apologize for skipping ahead to special teams, but having those two guys as returners together, honestly, they could be the best duo in the return game in the country. Both of them have a lot of accolades. I think the way they were able to develop Crookshank in the passing game last year was great. I think you will see more from him. And then I think, if they can do the same with Youngblood, all of a sudden Rutgers has real playmakers on the offensive side of the ball in a way they really haven't had maybe that first season in the Big Ten, but definitely not otherwise.
And it was such a fun offense to watch last year under the direction of Sean Gleason. And you talk about the return specialist and the special teams unit in general. Rutgers led the Big Ten in average kick return yardage last year, 16th best in the entire country. So that could be a facet. You know what they say, Aaron Breitman? All three phases to win a Big Ten football game, Rutgers could personify that this year. So I ask you finally here, and we have a long way to go until the 2021 college football season. We got to get through spring practice. We got to go through summer workouts. We got to go through fall camp. And we talked about Rutgers' strength of schedule. But what will it take, Aaron Breitman, the managing editor of On the Banks, covering Rutgers this year in the college football season, to open up another bottle and sit back and relax and enjoy it after a successful Rutgers season? What is that win total for the Scarlet Knights in 2021?
Well, I mean, obviously the goal is to make a bowl game and get to 6 wins. I mean, personally, I'll look at it as if they got to 5 wins, 2 or 3, maybe more in the Big Ten, I would look at it as a successful season just based on where this program has been. But yeah, that 6-win mark, get to a bowl game, get to the middle of the pack to the Big Ten East. For Rutgers, it's going to be the same question every year. How do you do against Maryland, Indiana, and no disrespect, but I think you can lump Michigan State into that now too, right now to Spartan fans is how do they do against three teams? Obviously, we want them to compete against Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, Wisconsin. But really, at the end of the day, it's what the result is against those three teams. That's going to determine whether they make a bowl game on most years. So I think that's the real question mark from a schedule perspective. And if they were able to get to 6 wins, I'd be thrilled. And that would certainly warrant, not your run-of-the-mill scotch being popped.
I'll join you if they get to a bowl game. I'll come and we'll open up a bottle of scotch together if Rutgers earns a bowl bid this year. But a good note for Scarlet Knights fans, both Michigan State and Maryland in the regular season finale, both of those at home in Piscataway. I'm also very tuned in to the week number 2 non-conference matchup on the road taking on my Syracuse Orange. That will be a very interesting game to start off the regular season in the 2021 college football campaign. The guy bringing it as he always does, whether it's your family, your religion, and Rutgers basketball, or just Rutgers football. Aaron Breitman, the managing editor of On the Banks, covering Rutgers with the best of them across any portion of this planet. Aaron Breitman, as always, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. Always a pleasure to talk to you, and I'll take you up on that offer. If we go bowling, we'll have to share a scotch for sure.
I'm holding you to that. Don't think I'm just saying that here on the Locked On Big Ten show. I'm holding you to that.
Done.